Howdy, it's Jim Arado, and this is late November 2021. We're in Corinth, Mississippi, a very historically significant to the Civil War town, and just a neat little town on its own. And I wanted to put up this is just a quick little 20-minute video I made of us driving around, mostly looking at the historic buildings, mostly relating to the Civil War. There's some other buildings that we got in here too that are just cool on their own. And yeah, so anyway, I just thought I'd put this video up real quick. I used the Blue and Gray magazine travel guide, or their visitor guide. Also used a couple of brochures they gave me at the visitor center. Wanted to mention here really quick, we're stopping at SoCo Grind Coffee. Really classy little coffee shop. Yeah, this town is very lucky to have this coffee shop. We stopped in here and grabbed some drinks. They were really nice for us to have as we drove around town. And I just wanted to give them a quick mention. If you're going to be in Corinth, this is the place to stop and grab some coffee. I don't think there's a whole lot of options, but luckily this option is great. Going over some railroad tracks, wanted to mention that real quick. This town was so significant during the Civil War, mainly because of the railroads going through. And the Confederates had it, and the Union came and got it. And that's, I don't want to say that's the battle or the whole conflict in Corinth in a nutshell, but yeah, it was a popular place because of the railroads. And we're pulling in right now to SoCo Grind. I just wanted to mention that real quick. I took one picture inside. Look how cool that looks. That's very cozy. If I lived in this town, I would be hanging out at this coffee shop all the time, drinking coffee and reading books. Anyway, we really liked them, and I wanted to mention that. And Corinth actually gets kind of complicated, you know, with its involvement in the Civil War. Corinth isn't an easy place to really explain, and it'll forever be tied to the major Battle of Shiloh, which happened. Basically, the Confederates, you had a whole bunch of them here in Corinth, and the Union was going down basically to attack this town. And on their way, they camped out by Shiloh Church, and they got kind of casual. They really weren't expecting that the Confederates might come up and meet them. Well, the Confederates came up and met them. They mounted a surprise attack, basically, and all heck broke loose. Grant, Sherman, the rest of the Union was totally off guard, and they were not prepared. The Confederates were a little overconfident, to say the least, as they were kind of beaten up on the Union at Shiloh. They decided they probably could have taken them out the first day, but after a day's worth of fighting, they decided to finish the job in the morning. In the meantime, the Union got a ton of backup, and they were able to come back the next day and chase the Confederates off. Confederates come back to Corinth. They nurse their wounds, and they are very wounded. And then the Union finally comes down, kind of marches down, and mostly through, I would say, skirmishes and small battles, the Union takes over this town and its railroad resources. That's kind of a big deal. And the Union would abandon later. And actually, the Confederates would sneak out of town, and the Union would take over the town, and hold it till about the end of the war. Then they would kind of abandon it. The Confederates would come back and reoccupy it. But at that point, nobody cared. The war was pretty much over. And, of course, there is a ton more to this story than that. But I wanted to mention at least a little bit about Shiloh and Corinth. You've got the great Shiloh National Military Park, not too far from here. Corinth itself has a really nice National Park Visitor Center. Parker's Crossroads Battlefield, also with their own visitor center, is not too horribly far from here too. So this is just a great area for history. Great area, you're right on the Mississippi Tennessee border. Just lots of nice history, lots of nice little towns. Wanted to mention too, we're actually on our way to Borum's Drugs. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Really cute little old drugstore, kind of grill counter type restaurant. Really neat place. I stuck my head in here. I don't think they were open yet, but I said, hey, can I videotape in here? And the people running this place, and I think it's kind of a family-ran place, they were so sweet. And they let me come in. I'm going to put a separate video up about that. But I wanted to give them a huge tip of my hat. Just nice people. And they've got Civil War relics. They've got old Indian head relics. Old local ephemera that, if you're into history, you've got to stop there. They've got something called a slug burger that I so want to try. And I did not have a moment to come back here and get one on the way out of town. But I got to go back for that on another day. But yeah, just a neat little place, and wanted to mention them. We also stayed, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes from here, no more than 30 minutes. We stayed at the Pickwick Landing State Park, a wonderful state park in Tennessee, and they have a great lodge. If you stay at state park lodges, man, they can be hit or miss. This was probably one of the nicest state park lodges we've ever stayed at. They were dog friendly. They treated us, they treated our dog both like royalty. Just a wonderful place, and I can't rave about them enough. Wanted to mention in Shiloh, we did a Civil War battlefield tour with a battlefield tour guide, Larry DeBerry, who's lived in the area all of his life and has many familial connections to the Battle of Shiloh. I can't recommend him enough either. And just wanted to mention those things as we're going, kind of driving around and looking at sites in Corinth. You'll have to forgive me too. We, there's some one-way streets here that got us a little confused, so we're kind of driving just driving around a bit, I guess is the best way to say it. So I hope you enjoy looking at this neat little town with us. We are going right now towards the Curly House. The Curly House. It's going to come up here in about 15 seconds, I believe, or pretty much right here on us. And I believe on just about every driving tour you can do of the town, this is stop number 1. But yeah, the Curly House. It was built in 1857 by Hamilton Mask. The house was headquarters for Confederate General Braxton Bragg, Union General Henry Halleck for a time during the Union occupation, and later Confederate General John Bell Hood. The Curly family were post-war owners, and that's from the Blue and Gray magazine. And there's an all-star lineup of people who've stayed there. Hood is one of those guys that the more I read up on him, the more interesting he becomes. So that's kind of cool. Up here, basically we're facing stop number 2 on most of the tours. And that site, it's I believe it's some sort of an office building now, but at the time it was Grant's headquarters in June of 1862. And that is, I believe, it was the Mitchell House. And there's a little historic marker there. And here, coming up, we're just going to hit a whole bunch of significant sites kind of quick. But yeah, that right there was, or at one time stood, the former headquarters of General Grant. And that gives me goosebumps. And then basically coming up here, right now, right in this area, was General Thomas' speech site. And that was, General Thomas was basically giving speeches trying to recruit for the U.S. colored troops. Yeah, just think about that. That kind of recruiting, General Grant across the street. I just think that's darn interesting. Right here is the Seckles home, constructed for Leopold Seckles, a former Confederate soldier who established a business here after the war. And little guy that lives there seemed really nice. I kind of gave him a little wave, and I'm sure he gets tired of people going by and taking pictures and looking at his house, but he was sure friendly. And just pretty cool that somebody can live in a historic home like that. Yeah, and here on our right is the Duncan House. The house was headquarters for Confederate General Beauregard before Shiloh, and it was also John C. Breckinridge's during the Union siege. The original location was on a different site. It has been moved. And then right here, there were just a ton of historic markers here, talking about the railroad, talking about the battles. I could read some of that stuff to you, but I'm not gonna do it. But definitely an interesting site and a place to stop if you're in town. That kind of gives you a little info about everything. And at the visitor center, which I'm going to put up a whole separate video about the visitor center, but they have brochures about a walking tour and a driving tour. They sell the Blue and Gray magazine about the Battle of Corinth, and wonderful visitor center. Oh, there's the cops. Be cool. And we were told, I know some people we talked to at the Shiloh battlefield told us that a lot of the actual battlefield where battles took place in this area are lost to development. But so we didn't really bother. There is a driving tour of the battlefield area. We didn't really bother with that. But we sure enjoyed looking at the houses and just driving around this great little town. Up here, actually, I think over on our right is the General Quarters Inn. And that looked kind of neat. Looks like a nice little bed and breakfast. And I didn't really have a chance to research that, but that might be something to look into next time we're in town. Oh, and then right here is the Stewart home, which according to one of the brochures I got, circa 1858, home of James Erskine Stewart, one of Corinth's early mayors. So that's something to take note of. I know one of the brochures they gave me at the visitor center, I believe the walking one, they have Civil War sites of interest, and then they also have other sites of interest, which they note some other historic sites and things like that, which I think is just something neat to have around. And some of the other sites, even though they're not really Civil War related, they're still kind of Civil War related. So, and I think it's the walking tour brochure. Just really has some good information in it. Again, and you can get that at the visitor center. Oh, and right here is the Oak House, which was the headquarters of Leonidas Polk, I believe before the Battle of Shiloh. Built in 1857, Judge W.H. Kilpatrick used in Civil War as headquarters by General Polk. Bought in 1866 by Mrs. Thomas Quincy Martin and occupied continuously by her descendants. And I know up ahead we're about to see a church, and it's the First United Methodist Church, the oldest church building in town. And again, I just wanted to point that out. More interesting facts. Oh, and then coming up is a house relating to Albert Sidney Johnston, possibly the biggest name at the Battle of Shiloh for the Confederacy. And he did die at the Battle of Shiloh. Yeah, there we go. Well, this is Johnston's headquarters site of headquarters of General Albert Sidney Johnston, April 1 through 4, 1862, right before Shiloh. After his death at Shiloh, April 6, body was brought here to lay in state, April 7th, 1862. And that's kind of a big deal if you're into Shiloh and the battle and Albert Sidney Johnston. Up here on the right, I'm not sure which of these buildings. There were a couple of buildings here, and it just mentioned that it was a former bank, and in 1874 the James gang robbed it. And of course the James brothers participated in the Civil War. So even though it's not Civil War related, it is Civil War related. And I thought that was pretty neat. I do come across a lot of caves, a lot of banks that claim that they were robbed by the James brothers or the James gang, the Youngers and the James brothers. I kind of believe it here, though. I mean, some of them I don't believe, but this town feels, yeah, I believe them here. Yeah, and just right through here in just a moment, we're going to pass kind of a block of buildings that were built in the 1870s, 1880s. And, it looks like there's little businesses in there now. But you can look at that street and go, oh, yeah, it looks like it was built in the 1870s, 1880s. And it's, let's see, I think we'll turn here in a little bit, but it's Cruz Street. The historic buildings on this street, erected mostly between 1870 and 1880, were used for everything from saloons to ladies' shops. And yeah, some great old ad paintings on buildings there. I wouldn't call that label scarring. It looks like those old ads have been updated. I like that. Yeah, there's the old buildings I was talking about. That just looks pretty cool to me. And then coming up here, we're about to turn into a parking lot. And there's several historic markers kind of talking about what went on here and talking about the battle. Yeah, so that this parking lot is kind of a main stop as you're driving around. And again, there's several historic markers talking about what you would have seen in front of you here in just a moment. Yeah, but yeah, Corinth is just a fun little town to drive through, and we enjoyed it quite a bit. Very rural, very calm. And as far as the historic buildings and all go, just easy to get around and look at. Yeah, so not a spit and polish outfit, but tough and practical fighters. A Civil War photographer caught this group in a candid mode. Before the 1850s, the public's conception of battle formed mostly from romanticized drawings and paintings. Photography changed that image during the Crimean War and the American Civil War, with pictures showing things the way they really were. The photographer took this picture in the vicinity of the Tishomingo Hotel and Railroad Station. A tent encampment can be seen beyond the loading platform along the railroad tracks. And that next sign coming up talks about tents, army wagons, and soldiers crowd the area around the railway depot and Tishomingo Hotel in this view. Over the course of the war, it is estimated that about 300,000 troops served in Corinth or passed through this railroad junction. Civilians, including families of army officers, also came to Corinth. Some, such as 9-year-old Maud Morrow, daughter of a Union doctor, wrote of their experience. Maud described living in the old Tishomingo Hotel in 1862. We were given headquarters in Tishomingo Hotel, the old Tishomingo Hotel. Can I ever forget it? We were given a large, cheerless room in the second story. The floor was bare. The 4 large windows were without blind or curtain. Across the railroad was another encampment. Right after night I have sat on the upper porch listening entranced to the regimental band as it played Hail Columbia, Star-Spangled Banner, Red, White, and Blue, Rally Round the Flag and America. Each night the band would play from dark to bedtime, and I could not be induced to leave my post until that last note had died away in silence. And there was another sign about the hotel, and then we just passed New Home. L.M. New, who served here as a Confederate lieutenant during the war and was mayor in the late 1880s. And we're about to pass Fish Pond House. This 1856 house got its old nickname from the unique copper basin that once sat on the roof. The house was General Beauregard's headquarters during the siege. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed doing that tour with us. Thanks.